Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for clicking in, checking out the video. I'm really excited for this one. I think there's some really good thoughts that I've come across and I've been meditating on that have really helped me in my life, and I want to extend on to you now. So, before the COVID crisis happened, did you feel overwhelmed or stressed, or like there was just too much to manage in the day to day of life, and that maybe you wanted to make some changes? Maybe you wanted to add something, take something out of your life, but days just kept rolling into days and weeks and weeks and months into months. Does that sound familiar? Well, if so, I have some really, really good news for you. And it's that God wants to change that for you. He doesn't want to leave you there. He does not want you to go back into that state of overwhelm and stress and chaos that you were in before. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Two very practical things to do to go back into the new normal with, so that we go back into clear priorities, we go back into organization, a manageable schedule, and satisfaction in knowing that our time, energy, and attention is being spent on things that really matter to us. Okay, so before we talk about that, let's do a real quick review of what we've talked about during this COVID crisis. The first one that we discussed is that this time may be exposing substitutions, things that we did in the normal course of things that we went to for numbness, for temporary pain relief, that are in place of God's healing, and repenting from that and giving God his rightful place in our lives, so that a true work of deep and restorative healing can begin for us. The other thing we talked about is that during this time we need to grow in our faith. We're meant to grow through difficulty. This is a difficult time. We're meant to be growing, and we need to be growing in our faith. We are transformed under pressure, right? One very practical way to do this is to get around someone or a group of people who have stronger faith than you do, because they will rub off on you, and their habits, the things that they do to develop their faith, will rub off on you, resulting in greater and unshakable faith for you as well. The other thing is that we need to confront the facts of the situation so that we can make informed and decisive and sound decisions about our future and our reality. And last time we talked about the need to connect to our hearts. Remember the quote we read from George's book, The Next Level Entrepreneur, that the heart is the sum of all that you are. It's more than your mind, your soul, your attitude, and your emotions. So follow it, because it will guide you well, like a compass points north. So we need to connect to those passions, because George also taught me that our passions are the fuel to our success. It's the fuel in the tank to get us through difficult times and into the success that God has for us. So today, we're going to be talking about the two practical things that we need to do to not go back into chaos and overwhelm, but go back into our days when the shutdown gets lifted with clear priorities. So the first thing that we need to know is that this right now is the time to get our priorities straightened out. It's not when the shutdown gets lifted and we go back into the overwhelm and the pace of society, of day-to-day life. It's not then, it's right now. And there's two very practical things that we need to do to not return to overwhelm and chaos, but rather return in kind of a reset mode, having reset our priorities. Return with clear priorities, return with a manageable schedule, and return, like I said, with the satisfaction of knowing that your time and energy and attention, because it is limited, is going toward the things that matter to you. The first thing that we need to do is, as weird as this may sound, add something. We need to add something to our life. We need to add a positive and productive habit. So here's the thing about habits. Habits are going to form the outcome of our life. Our daily habits will produce the outcome of our life. And here's how it all works. It goes all the way back to our belief system. It goes all the way back to, well, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about the world, other people? What do you believe is possible? What do you believe you're deserving of? What do you believe you can do? It goes all the way back there. That's where every habit and outcome is going to start, because that belief system is going to influence the choice that you make. The choice leads to a behavior. Then you make a choice and you do something. Behavior repeated over time form habits. Habits, how we habitually operate on a daily basis, will make up the outcome of our overall life. So that's the way that habits work. So what we need to start doing right now is forming a new habit that when everything gets lifted, returns to a new normal kind of thing, we don't want to get slung back into the same chaos that we were drowning in before. We want to go back in with a new habit. So whatever that is, pick something very productive. Maybe it's a relationship habit. Maybe it's an exercise habit. Maybe it's a spiritual growth habit. Maybe it's a habit that will further your career that you love and you're passionate about and you want to go further in. Whatever it is, we want to pick and develop a habit now. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to walk you through what's called a 30-day habit tracker. So the way that this works is we first need to set a goal. So the goal that I'm going to set is spiritual growth. I had someone say to me recently, a good friend and mentor who I really admire. He said, if you don't do anything else, do this one thing, and it's to set aside 40 minutes a day to just seek God and to just hear from Him, to get fresh revelation from God, to operate, to speak from, and to teach from. So that's what I want to do. I want to grow in spiritual development. I want to grow closer to God. And the behavior that I'm going to track is 40 minutes a day of doing nothing but making time for God, of doing nothing but seeking God. So I have my goal down here. I have the behavior I'm tracking up in the column here. Now for the next 30 days, I'm going to put either yes, then I did it, or no, then I didn't. And the idea is to get off to a good start, get 2, 3, maybe 4 in a row, and then don't break the chain. Now you have a chain started. So you don't want to break the chain. But here's the thing, we're all human. We're going to not be perfect. We're going to break the chain at some point. All right, so what do we do if we break the chain? Well, we need to choose how we're going to respond to that. We need to choose to respond in a way that gets us back on track. So have you ever been skiing or snowboarding? You ride up the chairlift, you get up to the top of the mountain, and you want to ski back down so you can get back to the cabin below and sit by the fireplace with hot chocolate, right? But you can't just point your skis in a straight line and go down the mountain. No one can do that. That's way too fast, right? You have to turn side to side as you're going to get on those edges to push some snow, to hit the brakes, and control your speed as you go. So what would happen if we start skiing down a mountain and we start going to the left to control the speed? And we say, oh, well, I'm off track. I guess it's all over. I'm just going to, well, you would ride off the mountain, or you would ride into the trees or the rocks or whatever is over there, right? If your destination is forward and you start going this way, then your next decision needs to be one that gets you going this way again. Maybe you start going this way now. Your next decision needs to be one that gets you going back on track. And if you do that, you will arrive at your destination. You will. It doesn't have to be perfect. It won't be perfect. Don't quit and don't give up when it becomes unperfect. Just make the next decision one that will get you back on track. All right? Okay, guys, so that's how we're going to use the habit tracker. Set a goal, pick a behavior to track. We want this to be a key behavior. This is a behavior that if you do this behavior consistently, it will significantly move the needle toward growing closer or achieving the goal that you set. Okay? So that's the first thing that has to happen right now before we get back into this new normal. Right? Before we get back into the swing of things, we need to add something. We need to add a positive and a productive behavior that becomes a daily habit in our lives. Okay? Number 2, the second thing we need to do is remove something. And this may be even harder than setting a new habit and adding something. So what do we need to remove? We need to, well, first of all, we need to say no to something. If we were living in overwhelm and stress and chaos, we've said yes to too many things. And I know that's really hard, but we need to say no to something. We need to take some things off the schedule. Maybe we need to remove or limit bad influences that we're getting around, hanging around, and are influencing us and nudging us in a direction that we know is wrong. Or maybe there's a bad habit in our lives that are costing us, but in the pace that we were living at before, we didn't have any time to pause and to begin the process of uprooting and replacing that with something new and that actually serves a productive purpose in your growth into your greater potential. So, removing a bad habit is just as important as adding a good habit. So, my grandmother used to have an amazing garden out back, and there's still a nice garden out there, but not as nice as when she was taking care of it. And a few years, she had these amazing rose bushes, and I would go out there with her when she would garden in the morning, and she would say, Garrett, these rose bushes, they're going to try to produce more buds than they can sustain. So we have to come out here with the clippers and we have to prune the bush. We have to clip off most of the buds that this bush is trying to sustain, because their bush can't muster up enough resources and energy from the ground and the sunlight and the water to sustain and bloom all of these buds. If it tries to, we're going to end up with a lot of very small blooms. But we want a few big blooms. So she would go out there and meticulously trim and prune the bush. And it was a hard thing to do. She handed the clippers to me one time. She said, why don't you work on that bush? And it was hard for me to clip off this bud. I was like, well, but this is going to turn into a rose, right? Well, I don't want to clip this off. But it was an important lesson, because I needed to learn that not everything that looks good needs to be on the bush. And if you try to keep everything that looks good on the bush or on your schedule, you're going to end up with too many things and too few resources from you to give. Right? So us as humans, we're like rose bushes. We need to prune the bush. We need to get some things off of the daily list. And that means saying no to some things so that we don't overwhelm our schedule and ourselves and try to give energy that we don't have to too many things at one time. That means uprooting some bad habits, replacing those with habits that serve a productive purpose in your growth into your greater potential. And that may mean saying no to, or at least limiting exposure to people who nudge you, who influence you in the wrong way. The two things, we need to add something and we need to take something away. And let's do this now so that we don't return to overwhelm and chaos, but rather to clear priorities, a manageable schedule, and satisfaction in knowing that our time, energy, and attention are going to things that are truly important to us and truly important to God. So, like, comment, subscribe to this channel for more encouragement, for more videos like this. And if you are not already plugged into the Young Adult Life Group, direct message me, Facebook, Instagram. I'd love to engage with you more on this topic. I'd love to talk about how life is going, pray with you, and invite you into the group, get you plugged in to the group text message. If you are already plugged into the group and you're on the group text, then text or call me. I'd love to talk with you about this or just how life is going. So thanks for taking a little bit of time, and I hope that you'll get to work now. The time is right now, as soon as possible, to do these two things: to add a good productive habit and to remove things that you need to start saying no to trim the bush. Okay? So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.